Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell with the law firm of Dell and Schaefer, and I want to talk to you about a doctor's guide to total versus residual disability benefits. And a lot of doctors don't understand the difference between total and residual disability. So total disability means you're unable to perform the substantial material duties of your occupation. And residual disability, which is in most disability policies, it's kind of a standard now, although sometimes you have to get it as an added benefit, but basically what residual disability says is you're unable to perform one or more of the important duties of your occupation, or you're unable to perform those duties that you were performing pre-disability for as much time as you were performing them before. And the most important component of residual is that you have at least a 20% or a 15% loss of your pre-disability income. And that percentage of loss that you have to have is going to depend again on what type of policy language you purchased. You know, when you purchase these policies, every disability carrier has different language, but often they're fairly similar. Now, when determining the percentage of income that you have as a loss compared to what your pre-disability income, your disability policy is going to define what your pre-disability income is and what the method is for calculating that. And often it's either going to be the 12 months just before you became disabled, an average of the 24 months before you became disabled, or it could say the average of your 2 highest grossing years out of a 5-year period. And when you determine your date of disability, if you're going to have a residual disability claim, it is strategic in choosing your date of disability so that you can maximize what your pre-disability earnings are. In some cases, when looking at the definition of pre-disability income, it could be the prior calendar year. So for example, if you're on the fence of a date of disability between, say, December of 2020 and January of 2021, it could make a big difference in your pre-disability earnings from looking at the earnings in 2020 versus taking into consideration the earnings in 2019. So it's a fairly simple financial analysis by looking at your tax returns and your P&L statements, which obviously have to match from what you reported, but it's a complicated process in determining what the date of disability is that's going to be used, because the date of disability has to correspond with your reduction in work duties, and it has to correspond with your medical care and treatment. Because at the end of the day, when you submit your claim to the disability carrier, they're going to go back and look on paper and see, do you have the medical support number 1, showing that you were having difficulty working on the date that you claim you could no longer do your duties or were reducing your work capacity, and do you have the loss of income at that particular period of time? So that's I'm giving it to you relatively simple, or maybe it sounds complex to you, but all of these things have to come together to properly choose your date of disability and then support the claim. One of the difficult things for a doctor, and what we commonly help doctors with, is how do you determine if you should file for total disability or residual disability? It's going to come down to the type of work environment you're in. And when we talk about doctors, it's very broad because there's hundreds of different types of doctors. You could be an employee for a practice. You could be running your own practice as a business owner and a doctor. So there's lots of complicated factors in terms of, can you just stop working completely, or are you a doctor who's running your own practice with your own staff, with your own nurses, and you're trying to hang in there as well because you want to keep your practice going. And what makes it really difficult as a doctor, which we certainly understand, is the fact that once the word gets out that you're no longer able to practice, or that you're having difficulty practicing, and let's say, for example, that you're a surgeon, then your referrals are going to dry up. Because if you're a surgeon, you rely on other doctors often to refer you these particular patients. And if the word is that you're disabled due to whatever the condition is, or you're having difficulty, then the referrals are going to stop. If you have to report to your medical licensing that you're having difficulty doing your job and you potentially have a limitation on your license, and obviously you can't do your job, Same thing with hospital privileges. If you have to report that you're having some kind of difficulty and you lose hospital privileges, then you may not be able to work. But in many situations, my experience with the doctors, and let's take the scenario where you haven't been in a car accident or a skiing accident or have a sudden some type of disease diagnosis that came on very quickly and unexpectedly. It's more often than not, it's the chronic pain type disability claims or the degenerative type conditions, whether it's your neck, your back, your shoulder, your wrist, or it's a neurological disorder that you have that's progressively gotten worse and now it's getting to the point where you can't work. It's the fact that what makes the claim difficult is that you've likely been working through this condition for a number of months or maybe even a number of years. What's going to make the claim easier for you is that if you are a person who's dealing with a chronic medical condition, if you have a history of medical documentation, that's going to put you in a much better spot to have your claim more easily approved because it shows that you've been treating for a period of time. If you're a doctor and you haven't been treating and you don't have a medical history, then we're kind of starting from ground zero and we have to work through that process to build the medical support. The one thing you have to think about when you're going to be dealing with a disability insurance claim, and you should never forget this, your claim is only as good as how bad you look on paper. And what that means is you've been filling out medical records for patients for your whole life. If it's not in the chart, it doesn't exist. So when you, as a patient, are seeing other doctors, you have to have every single one of your complaints, every restriction, every limitation, any type of objective physical complaint, any type of complaint, subjective complaint that you have, it has to be in your records or it doesn't exist. And that is super important in terms of moving forward. Now, because of the fact that you're likely someone who's been chronic and been dealing with this issue, you're thinking about, do I just stop working and file for disability and hope that I get total disability? Or is there a way that maybe I have the opportunity, again, not every employer does this, can I cut back on my duties at work? Can I go from maybe 5 days a week to 3 days a week or 4 days a week to 2 days a week? And if I do cut back on my work and I do have at least a 20% loss of income, can I truly continue to do the job with my physical limitations? That's a question that only you would know, and if you haven't tried it, it's something that I would always recommend that you do try. Because at the end of the day, getting residual disability, telling a disability carrier, look, I can't work for as much time as I used to, or I can't do this particular long surgical procedure, but I can do a shorter one, or I can do procedures that are 5 minutes long, but nothing longer, or I can see 5 patients a day, but not 10. It's a lot easier to tell a disability carrier that and get your claim approved than it is to say, I can't do anything. So that's why I like to often recommend that you first go down the road of a residual claim versus total. Now, keep in mind, any disability insurance claim you're going to have is going to have usually a minimum of a 90-day elimination period. That means that you have to be unable to do or either residually or totally disabled for a period of 90 days before you're going to be eligible. And then they're going to take another 30 days before they pay you, so it's really 120 days. So even in this 90-day period, the chances are that if you're someone with chronic pain, you have this opportunity where you can cut back. You can go down to a few days or change your procedures or modify your work duties and document this at the same time that you're cutting back at your duties at work, which will be documented in your CPT reports. It also has to correlate with your medical treatment, meaning every month you should be going to the doctor, telling them what's going on, telling the doctors that you're cutting back, and telling them how you're feeling. If you're feeling better and your pain is limited and you think you can work in this limited capacity, then keep doing that for a period of time. And to give you an example of how the policy will work if you're on residual, let's assume you're a doctor making $30,000 a month, and now you go down to $15,000 a month. You're going to have a 50% reduction in your monthly income. With the 50% reduction, the disability company will pay you 50% of your disability benefit. So that means if you have a $20,000 a month benefit and you have a 50% reduction, they'll pay you $10,000 a month. Plus, in my example, you would make your $15,000 a month, so you'd be netting $25,000 a month compared to the $30,000 you were making before, and you're working at half the capacity, hopefully reducing the amount of stress on your body and being able to do that for a limited period of time. Now, this is making the assumption you can continue in that capacity. Another scenario that a lot of my doctor clients have been able to do is if you have greater, usually in these policies, greater than a 75% loss of income, then you get 100% of your long-term disability benefit, which means you get paid in full. So many doctors who, let's say a doctor is making $400,000 a year, may go down to a scenario where they get paid under $100,000 a year, and then they're able to continue working in a very limited capacity and collect their full disability benefit. Now that's on residual. On total disability, if you're a doctor who's working for somebody, it's usually just an all or nothing. You stop working, you end your relationship with that employer, and you seek total disability. Now, a lot of doctors, if you're depending upon the definition of disability, if it says unable to perform substantial material duties of your occupation and it's limited to that particular medical specialty, then you may be able to go on do another job that doesn't require any of the same skills as to what you were doing before, collect your total disability, and work in that other job. I've had many doctors that have got out of medicine, went into some kind of real estate or real estate development, made $1 million in real estate development, were making $250,000 as a doctor, and continue to get their full total disability even though they're making a lot more money in their new occupation. I've also had a lot of doctors that make less money but still collect their total disability. For example, a lot of doctors want to go on and become professors or teachers or in-house doctors at insurance companies or do file reviews or become expert witnesses. All of these things are potential options if the duties are different from what you were previously doing. But if you didn't buy a very strong, true own occupation definition of disability, there are definitions of total disability out there that say unable to perform the duties of your occupation and not gainfully employed. And those are not true own occupation policies, because if it says not gainfully employed, then you can't go do another thing. So you're basically locked up by that disability policy where they'll pay you full total disability, but you can't go do anything else. So what it really comes down to is it's a function of what you want to do as the doctor. What do you think you can do, and how can we help you to maximize the benefits under your policy? Because at the end of the day, if you are someone who thinks that maybe I can do a little bit, or maybe I can do something else, or maybe I can work in a limited capacity, or you're just not sure but you want to know your options, there are often a lot of options if you were sold a good, true own occupation disability policy. And one of the best ways for you to find out is for you to contact our office, email us a copy of your long-term disability insurance policy or policies. Often we have doctors that have many, whether they bought a few individual disability policies, or you got one through your employer who may offer you one, or you got one through a medical association. We'll review all of your disability policies, provide you with an initial free consultation. We'll let you know right away what we think your options are. We'll let you know about the process and what it's going to take to get your benefits approved. Now, many doctors contact us months in advance of them even considering filing a claim, which is the best way to be planned and prepared for filing a claim. And a lot of doctors even go the step of contacting us, not their agent, not some insurance person who's not a lawyer, because they want someone who's been on the other side, someone who's seen what are the reasons that all of these claims are denied. What is it like to battle against these companies when they deny these claims? And I can tell you firsthand, and obviously, yes, I am biased because I handle these claims all the time. You unfortunately, when it comes time to file a claim, are not dealing with the most intelligent people in the world that are evaluating your claim. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence on the insurance company side for them to sell you a policy. When you go to buy the policy, they asked you for some medical history, you filled out a claim, you met with what was a very pleasant agent, they sold you a policy, hopefully the best policy you could get, They told the insurance company, this is what it is, this is what the premiums are going to be, and for years you paid your premiums. That's the easy part. When it comes time to file and to keep yourself on claim, it's a whole nother animal, it's a whole nother world, and that's the claims handling side. So you need to be prepared. Never think that it's just going to be as easy as when you got your policy. And obviously, if you've gotten as far as watching this video and doing some research, you're aware of that, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. Just want you to know we're happy to help you. We can help you no matter where you live in the country. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of references of other doctors for you to speak with. We welcome you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that if you can be regularly updated about videos like this that we do, where we talk about all different types of disability insurance claim-related issues. You should search our website by your disability company, by your medical specialty, or by your medical condition, where you're going to find lots of different articles that we've written that are relevant, videos that we've produced that are relevant to your claim, because really you have to start thinking like the insurance company. And when you can think like the insurance company, you're going to put yourself in the best position to get your benefits approved. So should you need us in the future, we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.